Good afternoon, and welcome to Universal Design in the IC Workplace. Now, please welcome INSA President Suzanne Wilson-Heckenberg.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this program this afternoon. This is brought to you by the INSA Foundation and the National Security Neurodiversity Network. Today's conversation is entitled Universal Design in the IC Workplace. This program aims to provide simple yet impactful practices that any organization can adopt to support neurodiverse employees and foster fully accessible workplaces. Before we start with today's program, though, I'd like to share a few housekeeping notes with you. If you have questions, and we hope you do, please use the question box on the right side of your screen. Feel free to identify yourself with your name and organization, but it's certainly not required in order to ask a question. We're also recording today's program, and it's open to the press and will be available on our website early next week. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce our moderator and our guest speaker this afternoon. Teresa Thomas, MITRE Corporation's Program Lead for Neurodiverse Talent Enablement, brings deep expertise and personal passion to this discussion. She has been a house parent in a group home for adults with high support needs and is a parent of an adult on the autism spectrum. She also created and leads MITRE's Neurodiverse Federal Workforce pilots and help produce the federal version of the Neurodiversity at Work playbook. We are delighted to have Teresa moderate this afternoon's discussion. Our guest speaker is Teresa Cunningham, CEO of Beyond Impact and an adjunct professor at Ocean County College. Teresa is globally recognized as a leader in disability and neurodiversity inclusion. Her groundbreaking work includes pioneering neuro-inclusive employment practices and shaping public policy. Teresa's expertise spans strategic planning, program management, and advocacy, and she continues to drive innovation in diversity, equity, inclusion, and neurodivergence. Teresa and Teresa, thank you for being with us today, and I know for one, I am looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
This is great. I'm really excited too. Thank you all for letting us spend a little bit of time with you this afternoon and to hear from Teresa. I'm gonna go a little bit further with a little bit more of an intro to Teresa because I think you all are going to hear us go back and forth a little bit. And I've known Teresa for a long time. And when I first heard about the whole idea of neuroinclusivity in the workplace and these great things that could be done, the very first conference I ever went to, I met Teresa. We bonded over some Reese's peanut butter cups, I believe it was, and really, she taught me everything I knew for quite a long time, and really was there professionally and then as a friend just to help me find my way in this whole neurodiversity realm. So we go way back. I'm a huge fan and I am so thankful that you came. And I'm really glad that today we're going to broaden the talk outside of just neurodiversity and neuroinclusivity into the broader universal design, the things that if you stop and think about them just make sense, but we don't often stop and think about them because they're not on our radar. So I am really excited to see what you have to say about universal design.
Yes, and thank you. That was the kindest little intro. And the real reason, like, she got me with the chocolate, but she had Wonder Woman cup, and we have these little Wonder Woman things that I keep it on my desk because I have to remember I'm a Wonder Woman every so often. So we have so much work. I see there's 67 people here, which is awesome. Both Teresa, I'm autistic. Teresa's not going to out you.
I'm ADHD. If you don't know that, you've never met me.
So feel free, if you want a little bit more elaboration on that slide, please feel free to ask a question. We'll try to field it right away. And then also, if you have a big question, and there were a few questions that came in, we hope that we will answer those big questions in this presentation. So if we don't, we'll try to get there in the end. So off to you, Teresa. Slides, and let's do this. All right. So universal design. All right. It's a term that's used all the time. It's not really loved for some reason, and it's probably because, like Teresa says, it makes us think, and we're so busy doing our day-to-day that if we actually step back and look at the different ways we have processes, systems, spaces, think of the things that are annoying in your space. If you remove the annoying things in your space, including the annoying people that you work next to, probably eating lunch too loud next to you, you would get so much more done. And it's not just about the physical accessibility, it's for everything, your processes, your process, all of the pieces, all right? So, and when you think about designing for everybody, if you use a neurodivergent mindset, you will help everybody who have cognitive, sensory, or other differences, and it improves the experiences for all users. So, for example, your job applications to apply for a job. If the job description is really, really, really detailed, most neurodivergent people will not apply, and a lot of women won't apply unless they can tick every single box. And are they really, really required? Is it really necessary? So stepping back and looking at those things, those are barriers to entry. Those are barriers to keep people away from coming into your firm. And so look at them really with a critical eye. If you think creatively, like, would this work for somebody who's neurodivergent? Sensory, smells, and we're going to talk about a bunch of these things. If you say no, then let's look at how we can change it so that it can be made that way. And the reason we want to do this is there is money and time involved. By retrofitting processes, policies, products, systems, it will cost you 10 to 20 times more, not one time more, 10 to 20 times more. So there is an economic and personal toll that you will take if you and your team are not designing inclusively. So we're going to go into what that means.
Right out of the gate, right? What you're talking about here is doing it from the get-go, and instead of pushing it through, so that you're not, ripping out your doors and making them wider after you've built the whole building, kind of thing.
Yeah, which is exactly what we have to do when it comes to the way we do traditional recruitment. And we could talk about all this, or traditional management. Hopefully at the end of this, none of you will ever say, I need you to push the envelope out on it, I need it later. We're going to learn how not to do things like that. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, please. So this is everybody's favorite thing when we talk about universal design. So the curve cut effect. So when we design for disabilities, like the curve cut, we make things better for everyone. So it was originally set up to welcome our World War II veterans coming home so that they could navigate through the cities. Now everybody uses these curve cuts. Let's go to modern day. Next slide, please. Over 80% of Netflix users used closed captioning and subtitles. Over 80%. Closed captioning was set up for the deaf community, and almost everybody uses it. So if you design for one, it can benefit everybody. And those are just two simple examples. And just looking around the world, you will start to see all of these things. So let's go to how do they get there? All right. So Teresa, do you want to talk about the importance of language?
Oh, this is the trick question. And I think anybody who's hung out with us before has heard us, I think, probably touch on this. Is it it's neurodivergent, neurodistinct, neurominorities, or are you disabled? Are you a person with disabilities? Are you deaf, or are you a person who is hard of hearing? Like, how do these things need to be addressed? And there's several things at play here. I mean, number one, always the short and quick answer is ask the person. Or, get to know them well enough and listen to the way they talk about themselves, or, just talk about them as a person. That's the glib answer that doesn't always work. But the other things at play are the way language shapes culture, and the way you say things shapes the way you think about them and the people around you think about them. And so I think more even than just the linguistics here and the words you choose, you need to think about the strengths perspective, not relying on the medical model when you talk about disability and the medical reasons, it's this and that, but talk about neurotypes, you know, instead of as a disability, you talk about it as a different neurotype. The way you talk about, even more than the exact words you title things with, shapes the culture of the people around you and changes the way they will talk about people who are different than them in all kinds of ways. And I think shapes the way then they interact as well. So it might take a while of stopping yourself and correcting yourself, or being open to being corrected by people, and know that there are people on both sides of all of these choices. So when you talk about a person with autism or an autistic person, you are going to hear both sides of that from people saying you're absolutely wrong for using the other, which is why I started out by saying, ask the person you're with, and have some flexibility and some understanding. There are really strong feelings on both sides. Most people will default to wanting to be called autistic person instead of person with autism.
Yeah.
Anecdotally from what I hear, but not 100%. So I think that another part of this is getting used to being okay with being wrong. That's so hard for me, but it will happen. But
yeah, it's very funny. So we could spend days on this, and in a meeting you will actually hear it's a disability, it's not a disability, and I typically let people talk, and then it's okay. We could talk about what we call it, or we could talk about how we make an inclusive environment. So let's move on, right?
Yeah.
And so just be respectful of what a person, how they speak about themselves. Like I'm open and proud, and I'm like, I'm Audie, you know, it's all good. But there's some people that it's still the stigma and the personal of what's happening to them in their world, in their life, their experience has made them not want to be out and proud. So we need to be respectful of, think they might be Audie. You don't say that, okay? So let's like cut that one off right away. Neurodiverse, that's what we all are. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And we're going to talk about the strengths model instead of the medical model as well. So next slide, please. All right. So this is from one of my really good friends. They're out in the UK. They're called Genius Within, and they made this fantastic label head that talks about the overlapping strengths of each one of these labels. All right. When you hear dyslexia, and you guys are well able to read, so it's a learning disorder with difficulty reading, but it always is accompanied by visual thinking, creativity, 3D mechanical skills. They're puzzle breakers. And the best person I ever put in a place was a dyslexic coder who was able to break the reason they brought us in was they could not break this one code. It's a massive company that made a credit card that's on everybody's phones. I didn't just tell you who it was. It was the code that needed to make that happen was done and broken in 5 days by a dyslexic coder. Now, if that company wasn't open to that kind of mindset, they wouldn't have launched on time. All right. So it was out of desperation they came to us and they went, dyslexic? Are you for real? Like, yeah, I am. All right. Then we have ADHD. The kids coming out of school right now, the generation coming out is the first neuro majority. 53% of kids coming out of college right now say they are ADHD or otherwise neurodivergent. So if you want to bring these kids in and you want to retain their talent, you're going to need to change things up and become universal design. You need to be thinking for everybody, because the processes you have in place right now will not work. And I like this blanket statement I say, if it's annoying to you, it'll break an autistic. It'll break an ADHD. So think about the things that are annoying in your office. Think about the processes, policies. Why do I do this? If it's annoying to you, it will absolutely reduce the outcomes that you're going to have for everybody.
I think it's really interesting to pull this in with that language conversation from before, because, you know, when I came out of school, I was ADHD, but I didn't know I was ADHD. And so I didn't know what to ask for. I didn't know what to expect. When, you know, I just went in and they said, well, how long do you think this will take you to do? And I said, oh, well, I don't know. I still can't, I'm time blindness still, right? So the fact that they are going to come to you with the language to self-advocate means you sure as hell be ready to create an environment where they can thrive, because they're going to demand it because they know better. So, you know, that's an interesting, I hadn't heard the 53% statistic. I would
Just
love to
came
see the
out.
data
You
on
can do
that.
research. Yeah, you heard
Um,
it here first, kids.
I love that. But I think that plays into our military recruitment. That's a whole other conversation. It plays into our talent recruitment as well, in that these students know who they are and they have a little bit better idea of what they need. And so, yeah. Talk to me more about the bubbles. What do we got?
So, so much about the bubbles. I have a neurodivergence cheat sheet that I will send to you guys after this that you can use, stick it on your desk and put it in a frame and admire it. So you know what the different things are. We have so much to get through. This could be an entire day right here. So let's go to the next slide, please. So this is where I out myself as autistic. I already did that, you know, so I don't look autistic. Or are you expecting Dustin Hoffman? Please do not think every autistic person is Rain Man. It is so 1983, we're done with that, all right? It comes in all shapes and sizes. I am a hypersocial autistic. I cannot do math, but I can speak in front of 10,000 people and not blink. That is not supposedly autistic. It's why it was a late diagnosis. We are learning every day more and more about what these spectrums are. And the reason is it used to be done by all white men working with little white boys. And now they have learned that women and people of color have different experiences which affect our neuroinclusion in a different way. So where did all this autism come from? Do you know where it came from? We're properly being reviewed. We're finally being understood for who we are and where we are in this world. So if you think a lot of this is kind of hitting some buttons, maybe I am, maybe you are. It doesn't matter. The best thing that happened for me was this, and it was the most horrible thing at the same time, was I was working for 25 years in disability and neuroinclusion, and I didn't know I was autistic. And it was actually at the conference I met Teresa, and a man named Scott Robinson, he's autistic. I was talking to him and I said, I'm not going on any more panels unless there's an autistic person on it. I'm tired of these neurotypicals, blah, blah, blah. He's like, but you're autistic. It's like, no, I'm not. Everybody was like, hello. So I went home to my psychiatrist and my counselor I'd been seeing, and they assumed I knew I was autistic from when I lived in Ireland for 16 years. I just transferred over. Like, they just assumed I knew. And then I was like, then that means I have subconscious bias against people with autism. Ooh, that hurt. So that hurt, like really, really hurt. So please, and I'm being very vulnerable and very honest about this so that when you are working with people that may be autistic, maybe neurodivergent, and you have a stereotype, it's okay. We have our own stereotypes. Be aware of it and then try to get around that stereotype, that stigma that you have.
It's so hard. It can be so hard not to automatically go into defensive mode when you realize you've been totally that person. Yeah, I've caught myself a few times.
Yeah. None of us perfect. That's the one thing, all right? Myth of the well-rounded person. That's what we're trying to hire all the time. This perfect person who can do every single thing perfectly. Is that possible? No, it does not exist. And if you disagree with me, I'm going to prove you wrong in about 4 seconds. All right. Now with neurodivergent people, you'll see off to the side on the sign on the left, the circle that is not a perfect circle. It's going deep into one section and it's missing in another. We're all good at some things, we're all bad at others, but there's this thing called executive function. And there are some things that neurodivergent people literally cannot do. I have met people that could speak and self-taught 8 languages, and they cannot add 2 plus 2. They will never add 2 plus 2. Their executive function will not allow that to happen. If the person wants to be a translator, do they need to know what 2 plus 2 is? No. And why the hell are you looking for someone who is able to add 2 plus 2 when you really want someone who can speak languages? So we need to think about the way we do our job descriptions. Are we trying to get this purple squirrel, this thing that doesn't exist? Or are we looking to fill in the strength misses that we have on our teams so that we can strategically bring in somebody who's going to help us meet our goals? That's the way we need to be looking at JDs.
I love that about this. So we talk about this as the spiky profile, and I'm pretty sure you're going to hit on this.
Next slide. Here, as Teresa talks, I want you to get your phones out. Take a picture. All right. You will see.
If you feel safe accessing random websites, you can trust Tara, I promise. I'm going to do it. I'm doing it myself. But
do this with your teams. Because you will see that everybody's going to be coming at things differently. Now, the problem as a manager, if you find that everybody's spiking in one section and you have big holes in another, this is something that you need to be looking at. So my next full-time employment is going to fill in this hole, because as a team, you want a well-rounded team. Don't think about a well-rounded individual. Think about a well-rounded team. So a great way to bring up neurodiversity and to fix that tone is by sharing this with all of your employees on your team and have them do it and have an honest discussion about what we're good and bad at. And we're going to talk about how to do that in the next few slides.
I think it's a great to throw in this question. We had one question that was put in here for how do you encourage supervisors and colleagues to create a psychologically safe environment for all, especially those who might need it. And I think part of that, as we talked about how you set the culture with your language, is talking about the culture add of that spike in those profiles, and how, you know, how we turn that all into a team who, instead of being in the center of that skill profile circle, is out at the far edges. As a team, you've hit the far edges all the way around that circle when you bring in a lot of those different spikes in different directions and can balance out those weaknesses. And I think leaning into what a boon that is for your team, and how we balance each other out in these spiky profiles is one way you can help with that psychologically safe environment. That is a 2-webinar question right there, because there's a lot.
That's a dissertation.
There's a lot that goes into that, but part of that is the way you talk about it, and the way you talk about how strengths, and then the way you talk about how you balance the weaknesses instead of how relying on one person to be all things.
Exactly.
All right, has everybody done their? I haven't done my thing. I haven't done my scan. Are you going to show us what it looks like?
Okay, next slide, please. All right, so here's the benefits. And these links will give you the proof. So if you're looking for, how do I prove to my boss that this will happen? There's the links. There's your business. What's the word?
Business case.
Thank you. I've got this lovely thing also called dysnomia, so I forget simple words. It's really fun. All right, so people management. If you build neuro-inclusive teams, so you actively are looking for neuro-inclusion, and this is from the people you employ to how you manage them, all right? You increase employee retention, you get a much larger diversity of applications, and an increase in quality of life. Quality of life. If you don't believe about the diversity of applications, I'm working with Hearst Communication, like Cosmo and a bunch of newspapers and TVs, and they could not find somebody for this one role. And so they weren't looking for neurodivergent, but they saw how making plain text JDs might change things. So we made it a neuro-inclusive, universally designed job description. For the first time for a technical role, they had Black, neurodivergent, people of color, like it was and women applying for these tech roles, which they never had before. And they're like, oh, she's right. That is why Hearst is running it throughout their entire company, and everybody wants a piece of it. And we're building it really slowly because we wanted to do it well. So with productivity, you get better communication skills, and teams become 90 to 140% higher productivity. Teams, not the neurodivergent that you hire, they're superhuman and they're going to do the job of 12 people. No, the team becomes more productive because, as Teresa said earlier, you want people at the edge of the spikes on all of them.
Yeah. Well, and go back to our clarity conversation too, which is the one I always like to hit on, because you talked about the people who are annoyed versus the ones you break. And when you fix the things that break those people, it fixes the things that annoy people too. And that, clarity in your meetings, sending out written notes after every meeting, 2 huge ones. If you take nothing else today, please do that. Helps everybody,
Yeah. There you get your diversity of thought. If everybody, I've been in a room where the room looked divergent or looked inclusive. There were equal number of male, female, people of color, clearly LGBTQ. They were amazing. It ticked every box of inclusion. And then I asked everybody, who knew whose parents are still together? Who knew they were going to college? Who didn't worry about what they were going to do after college? Who knew somebody who had a job here that helped you get this job? All the hands stayed up. I go, you might look differently, but you're the same person. Truth. All right. So we all are going through this world. If you've ever broken a finger or a toe or whatever, try from the second you wake up in the morning to when you go to bed at night, you have to navigate the world differently. The world is set up for neurotypicals. So neurodivergent people and people with disabilities have to navigate the world constantly. So they're constantly being innovative. They constantly have to think about, how do I get into out of this situation? How do I do? And they manage. And what is extraordinary is their muscle for problem solving is through the roof. And that's why a dyslexic person was able to go and break a problem in 5 days, because that's just what they do every day. Okay. Annoying things, feedback. Clear expectations are the most basic, fundamental employee need. And Gartner just put out their employee index. Only 46% of employees strongly agree they know what's expected from them at work. That means 54% of employees have no idea what they are doing. The majority, all right? David Carey at Hearst says, how many people, when I'm asked how many people work at Hearst, I always go, about half of them. All right, it's the truth. So if we do this right, you will get 28% higher revenue, 30% higher economic margins, and double the net income. Plus, you've got employees that want to be there. Everyone's working to their strengths. It wins. So how do we do that? So next slide, please. All right, so this is how we create a psychologically safe space, how to be an ally, how to be a good team member, how to be a good manager. So the first thing, and this is the hardest often, is to agree the best communication methods for team meetings. All right, so are we using Slack? Are we using email? Are we texting? The answer is yes, is what I get from every place I work with. You can't have everything everywhere. You need one place where the information is. Agree to where that is so that everyone can always be on top of the information. Number 2, send out an agenda 24 hours in advance for the meeting. If you can't send out an agenda 24 hours in advance, you should not have the meeting. Full stop. If you don't know what you're meeting about a day before, don't have the meeting until you can do that. Number 3, send the accompanying materials an hour in advance so that new employees, neurodivergent people who want to understand what this meeting is about, and so that they're up to speed. That way they have time to process before they walk into the meeting so that they're able to bring their best ideas to the table.
And that's, I love that you brought, if you make it neuro-inclusive, it's going to hit a lot of these other things as well. So if you've got somebody with low vision or who is blind, they need those materials in advance so that they can set up their machinery to read it to them before the meeting, right? If you've got somebody who's hard of hearing, they need to be able to read that ahead of time so they can understand what you're saying with your lips. Somebody who's new, like you said, they need to look up all those acronyms that everybody keeps saying in these meetings. So making it neuro-inclusive also ticks a lot of other boxes.
Yeah. Thanks for saying the acronyms. All right. Everybody remember the first month you worked here at your current company, the first month. Did you understand a word of what was being said? No, nobody does. What if, so neurodivergent people won't be able to take notes and absorb and try to figure out what all these things are. They'll just be like, I am completely lost. And they'll just sit there. I am lost. But neurotypicals are lost too. They're just better at faking it. All right. Have an acronym glossary that everybody has access to. When I did the program at Salesforce, they just did a Google Doc that people just added. And now it's this massive thing that people use constantly. It's magic. It's really simple. All right. Get that acronym. If you will get people onboarded faster, if you have your corporate speak written down. All right. Allow room for people. You want to select a rotating note taker. Now, in my other worlds where it's not cybersecurity, I'm like, use Copilot, use all these wonderful things. Unfortunately, you guys don't get to do that. So you have to go back to the pre-AI days with selecting a random note taker. Neurodivergent people can either typically be in the room and participate, or they can take notes. They can't do both things. People that are low vision, people that are there's so many people that just can't do both. It should not be a penalty for the team member. It should be rotating. It shouldn't matter on hierarchy. Note taking is a good skill that is going to go away like cursive handwriting. Make sure there is somebody who is a rotating note taker at every meeting.
And this is important back to the agreeing on the best communication methods too, that you talk about that you don't just say this is the way it's going to happen, because I know for me, I'm the opposite. I am much more likely to stay focused and in the room and paying attention if I'm the one taking notes. So even when I host meetings, I'm taking notes at the same time, because that's the only way I can hear what you're saying is if it's coming through my brain onto something I can read while I hear it. So I would be happy to be the forever note taker in a meeting series. But you wouldn't know that if it didn't come up when you're agreeing on those communication things up front.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm the same. I draw pictures, though. Nobody can read it. What I'm writing, nobody could translate it. But it's really important that that is sent and that those notes are put into the area that we agreed on for number one. So if somebody was out sick, if someone was at a conflicting meeting, they are up to speed. All right. And then that means you need to allow room for people who need to process the information. So that could be a neurodivergent person. It could be a new employee. It could be a person who got in a fight with their husband that day, me most days. It's not like sinking in today. I just need more room. And then the next day they have this great idea, but you're not having the meeting anymore. So much for that. Like, how much are you missing by not allowing room for people to process stuff outside of a meeting? And when ideas come over, you want to, number 6, ensure all team members have access to the new ideas. So if a manager goes, I need this later, really, really work hard, I just need this, all right? Nobody knows what they're talking about. So they go over to the water cooler, the cool kids. They're figuring out what the heck does Tara want? And then the cool kids know what to do and they come up with a plan. Your neurodivergents, your new employees, your employees of color that are used to being left out are sitting there trying to figure it out on their own. If they're neurotypical, they'll come up with something, but the neurodivergent person will just sit there. I have no idea what they want. They're afraid to ask the question because they've been told their entire lives they're not good enough and they're not smart enough, and they will freeze. And when they freeze, it is not their fault. It is the manager's fault because they were not clear and explicit in what needed to be done. And we'll be talking about that in a few minutes as well. We want to normalize declining after hours social obligations. Please normalize that. Please don't make people go to a loud, ridiculous bar. This was up in another meeting that I had. It was an international company. Somebody actually outed themselves as an alcoholic, saying, it's awful. Why does it always have to be in a bar? Why does it always have to be in a loud place? Why can't we do something that's just, and it was a great question. And nobody on the team had an answer for them, except for that's what we always did. All right. Think about your locations. Think about, is it necessary? Okay. And then you need to explain the hidden curriculum. I'll do another story that's allowed to, from Salesforce. I have permissions on these things. There was a fancy dress, like a black tie event in the evening. Everybody was leaving at 2, 3 o'clock on the Friday so that they could get ready. The autistic employee was not explained that this is a black tie event. Like, it said formal. It didn't say what that meant. He had no idea. So he was like, why is everybody leaving? He kept working and then rocked up to the place at 6 o'clock wearing the same outfit he was wearing at work and was like, what? Like, had no idea. So hidden curriculum is everything you wish you knew the first month on the job.
And the
Where's
things
the
everybody just
bathroom?
knows. Oh my God.
What's that?
The things everybody just knows.
Yeah, people don't just know. All right. And then here's another one that the autistic person gets in trouble, or the neurodivergent person. They actually read the handbook. And if the handbook says lunch is from 1 to 2, but everybody else is eating their sandwiches at their desk, but Teresa goes to lunch from 1 to 2 every single day, Teresa is so lazy. Teresa she's not working hard. Teresa doesn't understand the social outcomes of everybody's eating at the desk. Teresa's doing exactly what the handbook said. She's doing nothing wrong. You are broken. The company is doing the wrong thing. So, Teresa, do you want to fill in on that?
I think it's a great time to put in something about your ERGs, your BRGs, your whatever you guys call them, the resource groups, the social groups that get together. A lot of orgs have a neurodiversity focused ERG. If not, it's a great idea to start one. Ask your ADHDers to start it and bring along the folks that are autistic. This is what I had to do because just
you're smart.
Personality quirks. We didn't have some super social autistic people in our group at that time, but they help each other understand that hidden curriculum, or at least help bring the questions to the top. And we've got a small handful of folks who are right now writing an unofficial handbook of unwritten rules. HR heard about it. They thought it was a great idea. They want to come in and help. And we're like, so the opposite of the point.
Stay away.
Because we want that. Our CEO said, anytime you want to talk to me, you can stop me in the hall, you can call me, you can stop by my office and just talk to me. No. He does not mean that. Right? There's so many things like that. Anytime you have any problem, you know what? Our CEO is not going to fix the missing toilet paper in your bathroom. That's not where you go, even though he said it. That hotline is not for when you're mad at somebody you're working with. That our handbook says our hours are 7:45 to 4:45 every day with a 45-minute lunch, and then you leave early on a Friday. I don't know, something from the 70s, right? Nobody has done that in decades, but it's written. So, or the opposite, our official dress code is dress appropriately.
What does that mean? Yeah,
So,
exactly.
What do these things mean? So yeah, we've got some people that are writing down the unwritten rules, which I think is going to be, and it's taking us a year because
there's a lot
vague and there's a lot of them.
Very good. Okay, next slide.
Great one.
I'm sorry, I could talk to you about this all day. I'm
really
excited about that. Employee feedback. MIT did a piece of research. I can't see the bottom of my screen here. I hope that the link is there. If not, and somebody wants it, let me know. I'll send you the research link. MIT found that if you give clear, explicit, job relevant, observable feedback in the right time and the right place, in the right way, you will decrease the amount of mistakes your employees will make exponentially. Okay, like without extra money. Money doesn't make them change, this does. All right, so the first thing we want to do is build a trusting relationship. So you need to have that psychological safety. You can do that if everybody in the company and your team understands everybody's coming into this world with their own problems. Like we have husbands, families, healthcare, parents, children, like all this stuff. And you're supposed to come into that office and be like, dun, 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 I am perfect. All right. Nobody is perfect. So recognizing that if Teresa comes in every single day and she's like, hey, good morning, she grabs her coffee, she has her routine or whatever, and one day Teresa comes in and she just goes straight to her desk. If you are in a trusting office, you could go, Teresa, what's going on? Do you need a walk? And that level of empathy makes it so much easier for everybody to be able to be at the office. Like truly knowing that somebody's got your back, doesn't matter who on the team, just knowing that you can have that trusting relationship is really important. Mentors, it's not a magic wand. It's not, oh, those two are autistic, they can mentor. Like, no, that's not how it works. That's like going, those two women have vaginas, they should be together. Like, no, that is not how you pick out a mentor. All right. Where are they going? Where do they want to go? What are the things they enjoy? You know, how can you help them? Can you guys gel? Then you can start a mentorship. But it's not, oh, they're autistic, let's just stick them together. Job coaches are helpful, not 99% of the time, not really needed. You know, like maybe in the first few months so they get into the routine to help with the hidden curriculum, but they should be just doing just fine. If you are, just to give just a few statistics, 50,000 autistic students graduate high school every single year. 70% of them are in mainstream classes the majority of the time. Only 17.4% actually go to a four-year college, and only about 25% actually graduate. So if you have an outed autistic college graduate, the only thing you need to say to them is, when can you start? All right, that's it. So now with feedback is timing. Timing is everything. I have it in 2 spots. It's that important. Positive feedback you give immediately, but it's specific. So not great job on that presentation today. It's, you know, slide 5 really explained X extremely well. That was awesome. Thank you. Now Teresa knows that's the way they want their information. All right. So not good job, specific. Negative feedback is only given before the task is repeated. So Teresa really screwed up that PowerPoint. And so I'm going to wait until she's going to do the next PowerPoint and then say, Teresa, the last time you did this, you forgot to do 1, 2, 3. So this time when you make it, can you make sure that those pieces are in there too? I loved what you did with this, but without those 3 pieces, it's really nothing. Okay. What happens to Teresa is she's immediately able to address that problem. Now, let's do it the wrong way. It's Thursday afternoon or Friday evening, and Teresa, you made an absolute mess of that presentation. You made our team look horrible. Horrible. We'll talk about this on Monday. All right? We've all gotten that. What's Teresa going to do over the weekend? Stew, panic, like look for another job. I'm about to get fired, right? They're going to come into work, if they even come into work that next day, scared. Yeah. The manager, 9 times out of 10, forgot that they said that they were going to talk to them on the Monday. And so now they're like, oh my God, they're not even. It is a spiral of hell, okay? Don't do that to anyone ever, all right? Timing is important. Good timing and feedback is clear, job relevant, observable, and specific. I'm going to say this like 80 more times. All right. If it doesn't hit all 4, You are complaining. You are not giving feedback. Let that, how many times are you complaining? What does that say, Teresa?
This is you, when you showed me this slide the first time when we were talking, I made notes and this sits on my desk now. If negative feedback is not clear, job relevant, observable, specific, and actionable, it is just complaining.
I love it. Love that.
It's on my desk now.
Oh gosh. Anyone else who does that, please send me a picture. I will love that so much. All right. So I have been clear, job relevant, specific, you know, the works. But Teresa keeps screwing up slide number 5. All right. We create an action plan that is with SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based, so that you can empower them to be able to achieve this. This is a good way of being able to make sure that they are doing what needs to be done. 9 times out of 10 with neurodivergent people, it is, I didn't get it done because Teresa was supposed to send me this and she didn't. Oh, really? Huh. Teresa, why aren't you sending information to 9 times out of 10? They don't know that they should be going, Teresa, I need that. Teresa, I need that. Teresa, I need that. It's something it's a learned piece.
No, if you work with me, you got to know that.
All right. So you want to understand. And if you can understand the why, then you're going to be able to help them be able to do their job more effectively. And 9 times, I say this with all honesty, it is typically not the neurodivergent person's fault, besides not understanding that they can constantly harass somebody to get information.
So just to pull that back into the universality of that kind of a thing, when you've got introverts, when you've got cross-cultural influences where people you don't go bug other people, or you know, they're lower on the totem pole at work, and so they are intimidated by people that are higher up that are supposed to be sending them stuff, or vice versa, right? When you deal with these things, that clarity, the timeliness helps everybody, not just your folks who are neurodistinct. And please don't, if you catch yourself thinking that is common sense, right? Everybody knows that. Stop yourself. First of all, what is it that actually is common knowledge here? Because putting that into a sentence oftentimes is impossible, because we don't even know what we know, if as somebody who just knows it, right? So and I anecdotally, I don't have data to back this up, but I know a lot of my autistic friends, they don't make assumptions. So you can't assume that they've assumed knowing the truth. So I might have just had to write a whole, give some feedback to somebody about that. So
I love that so much. So I have a thing that they do in Europe. I lived in Ireland for 16 years, and they write the word assume. And if I do this, it'll be backwards. And it's assume makes an ass out of you and me. There's like 2 lines between the you. And it's like, as soon as you think everyone knows that, that is an exact moment of hidden curriculum. So if you can make yourself aware, thank you, Teresa, I'm going to use that.
Yeah, flag yourself. Just
yeah, that everybody does not know that. You know that. Okay, so next slide, please.
So we're down to 12 minutes.
Yep, we're just going to do some alt text, and then
I've got about 6 questions here for you.
Oh my goodness. All right. So making things universally designed means everybody should be able to understand and read things and understand what images are, and you don't want to let anybody down. All right. So for blind people, alt text is awesome because it describes what the image is. For a lot of neurodivergent people and new employees, they may not know what the purpose of that picture is. So alt text gives you that opportunity. So to use alt text, you select the image you want to add. You right click on the image, you say edit alt text. A pane comes up on the side of the screen. You can enter your descriptive text. Don't write a picture. What you want to do is write down all the words that are on it and what's the meaning and what is the image. And then that description needs to be really, really concise and details what you want the image to portray. So I have a real quick video on how to do this. It'll show you how easy it is to make everything you have alt text friendly. Let's see if it actually works.
Act it out for us, Tara.
Just that easy. Just that easy. It's legitimately that easy. There's no reason why every image doesn't have that. Okay. Next slide, please. Color contrast. Adobe has this free color contrast tester. You want to make sure that it's at least 4.7 to 1. You want that little green arrow. The amount of, so myself, my business, my husband's business, it's called the Breathing Rooms. We have these light teal and orange, and nobody was buying memberships. And I looked on, when this came out, I looked and I was like, let me see. We were not hitting the green. So we went and made it so that it went darker, so that the green button, our membership shut up over 100%. People could not read the document. The people that were doing it are old like me, 50 plus, and they're like, I can't read that, and they're not going to admit they can't read it. And so we lost out on so much money, so much money. So just check this out. Make sure your marketing is always set up so that everybody can read it. All right. Next slide, please. All right. So we are no longer doing these things. This is the no more list. All right. No more unclear communications, no more sensory overload in work environments, no more rigid workplace norms, no more unstructured meetings, non-intuitive software. I didn't talk about that, but like, yeah,
Nightmare.
everybody knows what I'm talking about with that. Inflexible processes, and over-reliance on oral communication only, and the implicit bias that we're all walking around with. That, again, an autistic woman who spent 20 years in the space had about herself. All right. So let us stop here and let's start answering some questions.
I do want to tie some of this together as well. If you can put that slide back up, I want to look at it really quick and just to talk about the things that we do to be neuro-inclusive that also help everybody. So things like if you allow more space in your room. Now, this is something we do for people who are physical, right? If you're coming in on crutches, I had to walk with a cane for a while because I had plantar fasciitis, right? And the space, trying to get in between chairs and move around, also helps people who are claustrophobic, also helps people who maybe are concerned about germs, right? So that there's doing that one thing, you know, fewer chairs at the table, a little more space between the tables helps so many different people. Allowing flexibility in your timing, in what times people have to work, or in how long they have to do things. Or what time your meetings are regularly, I don't know, too early or too late, right? That helps a variety of people, including folks with young children, including folks who, you know, have insomnia. Light, adjusting the light in the office, making it adjustable so it can be brighter for people who have trouble seeing. It can be dimmer for people who are overwhelmed by too much lighting. So that flickering light in the hall that makes everybody want to pull their eyeballs out can be turned off, you know.
There was the flickering light. There was a flickering light at a company that I was working with, and this is where they were going to put the autistic employee. And I was like, that's got to go.
Oh.
And they're like, okay, we can get LED lights. And they're like, what's going on? And we're like, we're hiring an autistic person. Like, they're going to be coming in. You can't be having that. And they're like, no, oh my God, we're going to get rid of this thing. Like, they were so excited.
Everybody hates it. Sounds, the little sounds people make are, there's a door on my hall that vibrates, but the smells too are a big thing.
Smells,
big.
That's the hardest smells. All right, because I knew we had short time. If you have a personal scent, I know you might spend a fortune on your Joe Malone or whatever, it actually hurts people. And on the other side, you've got a lot of people, especially in engineering and tech departments, that don't use deodorant, and it can get pretty smelly. And so and telling people you can't wear perfume and telling people wear unscented deodorant because you're making people ill, that's a hard thing to say.
Yeah.
So, but it's like, And it's often like, oh my God, Mary and her smell, like, and it's like, Mary, you can't, like, you smell lovely, but you can't do it in the office, you know, like, it's going to hurt people. If Mary keeps wearing the perfume, Mary's a jerk. And she doesn't want to be known as a jerk, so she'll stop wearing perfume. The deodorant thing is a little bit different, but unscented is not breaking any type of cultural barriers. It's unscented, it'll just stop. So it's something that I talk about all the time.
All right, lightning round. Oh, I'm getting yelled at. Okay, so let's see. We've answered some of these. How do allies who are not directly responsible for these processes advocate for change? And we talked some about the culture, about changing the language, about all this ammo you gave us with this data that you can carry. I think we're gonna we'll probably make these slides available. And I just want to put in a plug for the NatSec Neurodiversity Facebook group. No, LinkedIn, sorry, not Facebook, LinkedIn group. There's a LinkedIn group, NatSec Neurodiversity. If you are not a part of it, I suggest you join it. That'll be another place that we can ask questions and share things. How do we recruit neurodiverse folks who don't know that we have reasonable accommodations for neurodiversity? I keep putting in the job.
Love that question. You want to plain text your job descriptions. So if you remove, so looking at a job description, it's my favorite thing to do. Out of all the process stuff that I do, this is my favorite thing. Literally 80% of what's in your job description is not what you're looking for in your team member. So to actively recruit neurodivergent people, you need to create job descriptions that neurodivergent people will apply to, okay? This is an entire other conversation. However, look at, as a manager, what are you being measured against? Then look at your team. You have the spiky profile, so that's something you could do to start talking in your team about everybody's different strengths and weaknesses. What are you missing in your team to meet that strategy that's going to happen next year? All right, so that you are employing somebody with those skills. So the general cloud engineer, all right, there's like all these, what does your team need? Not what is the cloud engineer, okay? Do you need a college degree? Do you need 5 years experience? Do you need, there's like so many things that are put down on those lists. And when the manager really looks at it, they're like, no, I don't need that. Then don't put it on your job description. Get rid of it, because autistic people will only apply for jobs, and neurodivergent people mostly will only apply for jobs if they can tick every single box. And that goes for women, first gen, people of color. If you want to widen your talent pool, plain text your job descriptions. That will encourage people to apply. And then at the very bottom of like government, it's like we're EEOC, blah, blah, blah. That means nothing. So if inside the bottom of your, if you're interested, if you need accommodations, please let us know. We welcome different mindsets, different thought processes. Be like really legit and say like, let us know, like if you need to be online, if you need to be in a room that's quiet, like we want your talent. We will be flexible to ensure that we can harness your talent. So,
oh, there's so many great questions here. So we have one about universal design shifting to inclusive design and what the difference is there. Do you have anything on that?
Exact same thing, new word. So if you design universally, it'll be inclusive for everybody. And so there's a lot of change, verbiage changes. SHRM, the Human Resource Organization, they took away equity, and so it's now inclusion and diversity. Equity doesn't matter anymore. Like these are all words. So universal design, inclusive design, you want everybody inside your hug.
I think there's a little bit more about that too, in that, and what we've been talking about. We are specifically including people who are neurodistinct, and that makes it more universal. In that, even in your targeting a group and thinking how that can broadly affect everybody is a little more not just trying to be everything to everybody, but targeting some of the things you're doing for folks also has universal impact. So I think it's a little bit of both of those things.
There. I like your nuance. I don't feel as jaded by the change.
At least talks a little bit about, this is a tough one. HR and employee relations writing smart objectives that really aren't smart. They're subjective, judgment-based. This PIP, I actually literally saw somebody.
What is PIP? I'm sorry.
A performance improvement plan that was like, they don't make eye contact and they fidget too much and like so the question is, how do we get them to realize they're creating inappropriate performance improvement plans? And a lot of times that comes down to a lawsuit.
It's really simple. It's how is that clear, specific, observable, and job related? So the fact that I'm fidgeting, does that affect my ability to do the work? What is the outcome of my work? So if my outcomes of my work are failing, be specific on exactly what I need to do. How are we going to measure that? How are we going to say that this is achievable? Is it realistic for a person with blue eyes to have green eyes tomorrow? No. Is it realistic for a person who fidgets and stims to stop stimming? No. I have little rods.
Off camera. Yeah.
So, all right. And then timetable. So we will review this every Friday at 2 o'clock and you hold on to that. If the person is saying you're fidgeting or this and that, that is not a SMART goal. And you should push back and say, that's not specific. That is not observable. It's not job. It's not outcome related. So
a lot of times we hear about it after the fact. That's so tough. And it might end up as a lawsuit. I don't want to encourage that, but all right. We have hit 3:01 and there are so many more questions left. So I think we're going to, let me ask my INSA friends how we normally handle trailing questions. Do we keep answering them in the chat, or do you want us to hit these on our LinkedIn group? We can post the questions and the answers on our LinkedIn group.
Definitely LinkedIn group. We put the link to it in the chat also.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. There we go. All right, LinkedIn groups, there it is. I've been missing that chat because I've been watching the questions. Okay, please do join the group. Please do hang around. We're gonna try and have these at least quarterly, these kinds of talks, so we can talk and learn from each other and encourage each other and sometimes just commiserate. But we have questions about skiff life. I know that's a whole other thing. There are so many accommodations you can't have in the skiff, but there are ways to accommodate, like you said, with the handwriting instead of using the AI. There are some old school ways around that stuff, but you got to be extra creative is the short answer. Thank you all so much. Please do join us again as we continue to have these, and thank you, Tara, for giving us a chunk of your time.
You're very welcome. This has been so much fun. All right, thanks everyone. Take care.